Good afternoon, Heidi. Chair Labor, are you with us? It's muted.
Heidi, you might have to unmute yourself. And we can move on. Oh, she did.
Yeah.
Hi, sorry, the office filled with people talking loudly, so I had to move.
Okay, thank you, Heidi.
Yeah.
We are live, so you can start anytime. Please introduce yourself.
Okay, my name is Heidi Rock, and I am the Huntington Town Clerk. And I said I would testify because I've gotten a number of calls from people who are concerned about the new interpretation of posting and the fact that it expires on December 31st. We had all been operating under the assumption that it was good for a year from date of posting, although that does kind of fly in conflict with putting the year on the sign. I will say that right away. So I put quite a lengthy post on our local social media, sort of giving the background of, the fact that Vermont treats private land differently than a lot of other states, and explain the situation with the having to update the signs in early January when it's cold. The concern is that, a lot of people can't get out in the snow, older people, and that it's mostly the people who do not want to have hunting on their property are feel vulnerable now with this. And so along came 608. And so I read that and I put that out there to get comments from community members. And I will say that the farmers like the purple paint, as far as I can tell. They're busy people. They don't want to have to go out there and be updating signs, dealing with this all the time. And the purple paint seems straightforward. It seems unlikely that any of them at this point, I'm speaking generally, of course, would be all of a sudden taking posted land out of posting. And many of these farmers have animals, obviously cows, sheep, goats, and they want to protect their farm fields too. And they're also dealing with people taking signs down. One farmer who got in touch said that she found 3 deer blinds on her property, and nobody had even asked to go on there. So the signs are a factor. The purple paint is easy. The question more is, how do you legally post so that people know that this property is posted? And even though there's signs up, Chris Clark, who used to live in our town, had told me that it's not enforceable unless you do every step correctly. So what I would like to see is that the purple paint be implemented. The property owner registers with the town clerk, and the effective date is from the date of registration for 364 days. And then they come in, re-register, and we deal with the same carbonless form that I've been dealing with for 20 years here. And that said, I also got comments from people who felt that it shouldn't be easy for people to post their land. Make it tough, make them have to get out there and walk around and fix their signs, and they might not do it. And then that would be more open land for people to hunt. And so that's one interpretation as well. I'm feeling like I need to give a balance. But me as town clerk, I would like to see the paperwork in the office the way it always should have been. And I would like to see something that doesn't force people to have to always go out and check things to make sure that there isn't something that happens because of a technicality, like a sign falling off or a sign being taken, a tree blowing down. So that's my position on that. Do you have any questions for me?
Shocking. Thank you, Heidi, so much. You know, we're listening right now, you know, to both sides of this discussion. And one of the things we were thinking of this is if this is just a thought, you know, if we lengthen the time that you had to renew the posting, if that would be helpful. Like 2 years or 4 years.
Okay, that's a new thought. So I had also looked at the other bill that came along that the language was merely 364 days. A 2-year posting might work much better. I do think that from the comments I got from the landowners who post, they would like to not have to keep going out and changing things, you know, annually. It takes a long time if you own, you know, 900 acres or 1,300 acres or, you know, I will say we don't post our property and we also don't hunt. And it's not a problem for us. My family told me not to say this publicly because we don't want to be swarmed. But you know, I'm not. I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other. I'd like to see people out in the woods enjoying nature, and if they like to hunt, my dad was a hunter. We happen not to be in our family now, but you know, anything to encourage people to go out and maybe, I think I'm rambling. I apologize. I lost my train of thought.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Okay.
Representative Pritchard.
Yeah. Hi, Heidi. Thank you. So I'm curious as to, I think a lot of the members on the committee have received a lot of emails. And the majority of the ones that I have received with the people that you know, would like 608, the purple paint, it is people that are elderly and have a hard time getting out and trying to, you know, get their land posted. And I'm just wondering, are the majority of the folks that came to you, did they have the same concern? Was it more folks that just mobility to get out there and try to do it every year? And
It was well, first of all, it's a novel idea for us to think about. And the fact that the reading that I did online about this, because before I posted this, I like to make sure I do my homework so I don't look stupid. And I did read that 20 other states implement something like this successfully. You know, I don't have the details, but I think in general, they tended to be working farms. Not a lot of elderly people come out. And the people who didn't seem to like it had things like, well, what if the property gets sold and someone you know, is willing to allow hunting? How do you deal with the paint? And so I don't have an answer for that. And I did read that the paint has to be maintained. So if it's faded and looks like nobody cares, then maybe you could make an assumption that you can go on the property. Personally, on our property, we ask people to check in with us. It's one of the few properties in this village that is not posted. And you get too many people in the woods and it's not safe. So we like to make sure that, you know, if somebody's in there, you know, hunting by permission is fine, but the purple paint seemed to be what people, it was kind of like the novel concept and, hey, this could work and it might work really well. and has worked in other places. So I know I didn't answer your question because the people who responded to me who liked it, who are the farmers, are not elderly. You know, the 79-year-old farmer up the road is not a 79-year-old farmer from the 1950s. And so I tend to think of him as being young, but it's all relative. You know, he's not 30 either.
Thank you. Other questions for Heidi?
Mhm.
Heidi, this is the chair, and I'm going to present you with a scenario, like your honest answer.
Okay.
Some of the purple paint bills that we've examined call for 2 stripes, inch wide, 8 inches to a foot long, marked on the trees. Others, 1 stripe. But none of the stripes contain the information for the viewer of who owns the land, how to contact them, and whether it's just for hunting, or whether it's just for trapping, or whether it's just for fishing, or whether it's for all 3. Whereas a sign, the old yellow posted signs, delineate that. So my question is, if you have the old yellow signs remodeled with that information on them, because cell phones don't work everywhere in the woods.
Mhm.
A QR code is useless in my area because there is no coverage. And that would make it very difficult. However, if that was extended to a 2-year or longer posting and annual reporting at the town clerk's office with the fee, how would that set, you think, in your community?
I would be willing to put it out there and ask people what they think. I can't answer the question now because it would be, you know, having heard from both sides, I don't know how that would affect what people have already said to me. So you were talking about still putting up physical signs on trees or fence posts. Is that correct?
Right.
So it still begs the question of what happens when they get taken down or, you know, blow down or, you know, what fall off the tree, or the fence post. How is that able to be, enforced?
That's the
Because
question.
doesn't it have to be 400 feet between signs on every perimeter of the property? And so if you happen to not go up in your woods for a while and the sign's down, all of a sudden it becomes not really posted anymore. One of my sons was telling me about some friends of his who have a camp hunting camp in Ohio, and he said that the only sign that was required was to be in the dooryard of the house of the people who own the property. And my first reaction to that was, I don't think that's practical. You know, we have these rolling hills, we have roads, public roads going through farms. And if you're, you know, a mile away from your farthest point on your farm, which is up near Camel's Hump, and something happens, how is somebody supposed to know that it's, you know, on the main road a mile away that is legally posted? So I don't think that that's a good idea. I can see your point about trapping, hunting, and fishing. And I don't have an answer for that right now. I can put it out there and see what the creative pool of people who like to respond to these things have to say about it. And
Thank you.
yeah, if I can come back, you know, and talk to you again with more answers if you want. I do have an interest in this, so.
Representative.
I think I remember, I'm not sure if you heard the commissioner's testimony, but I think he was leaning toward if we wound up with a poster that the dating would return to what you described it for years had worked from whatever the date was to the date and not January 1 to December 31, because apparently that kicked up a firestorm.
Yes. Well, it's better than the way it's being interpreted now. And that would be I believe that's the other bill that talks that, I don't have the number in front of me, but that addresses that. I think with the exception of specificity for what's allowed and what's not allowed. Maybe you have, I'm thinking out loud here because this is, you just presented this. You have one line for hunting, two lines for fishing or something, and that's what's not allowed. And then, if you want nobody on your property ever, then you have to put signs up and say this is private property. Just like you would at the end of your driveway if you didn't want someone to come up your driveway. But I don't think I don't think it's an insurmountable problem. It's just more of an education, telling people what the stripes mean. It should work.
Any other questions? Thank you very much for your presentation, Heidi.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye. Keep up the good work. Bye.
Next presenter is Nick DeFilippi, and he is also on Zoom.
Should I start?
Yeah, be my guest. Please introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm Nick DeFilippis. I'm a 2-year resident of Vermont. My wife is a native Vermonter. I'm a psychologist, and I am from the start. I want to say I'm not opposed to hunting or responsible gun ownership, but we moved here, and the house has quite a bit of land attached to it. It was from a relative. Neighbors use the property quite a bit for hiking, skiing, and we have a pool that the current governor's former construction company built, and neighbors use that, and their children use it. We would not know when someone was on the land hunting unless they were very responsible and informed us. And so because of all of that, we were opposed to having anyone come on the land to hunt. Fishing, we don't care about. Hiking, we don't care about. Skiing, but hunting would be an issue. So we had to post the land. 2 years ago, it cost us $1,000 to have someone do it. And he was giving us a big break. Last year, several neighbors volunteered to help us with posting, but I can't ask them to do that every year. I am unable to do this at all because of a medical condition I have that doesn't allow me to walk without a walker. We have a forested land that's hilly. My wife is 62. She can't do it by herself either. So this is a financial burden on us too. We are on a fixed income, and a lot of people are. I would like to request that either the purple paint bill or something similar be enacted to help landowners, especially elderly and mobility impaired. The use of some modern technology might be considered. I don't see why the town halls or town centers can't have a list of properties that allow hunting, and hunters could check that electronically. They don't have to be in the forest when they do that. They could do it ahead of time. I believe there's always a mailbox or something designating the address of the property, and that could be online. But anything that would help the landowner financially and also physically would be a great idea. And I don't really have anything else to say.
Well, thank you for taking the time to talk to us. We appreciate it.
And thank you to moving to Vermont.
You're welcome. Oh,
Maybe we should-
I do have one other thing. The signs, using them, I think they're ugly and they eventually end up on the ground, and it's damaging the natural landscape. I really think that they should not be used or used as a last resort. And I am definitely through that.
Thank you. Any questions? Representative Chapin.
Thanks for your testimony. I was just, we've heard from a lot of folks who can't post their land on their own and apparently hire or find someone who's willing to do it for them. Like, how do you go about finding someone? How did you go about finding someone who would post? Is there sort of sounds like there might be a bit of a market out there. You said they gave you a discount.
No, I don't know. It just happened to be a friend who said they could post for us, and they gave us a really good price to do it. And then our neighbors volunteered. They knew that we had to post, and they just volunteered to help us. We gave them a nice dinner to do that. But otherwise, I would have no idea how you would find someone to do this. And I think it would be very expensive.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Seeing none. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
You're
At this
welcome.
point, we will move on to Morgan Gold, and that is also on Zoom.
Hey there, everybody. Thank you for having me today. My name is Morgan Gold. I am a farmer here in Peacham, Vermont. Our farm, we raise ducks, geese, cattle, trees. We actually have, I believe, I've been working to try to further verify this, the largest commercial duck or goose farm in Vermont. And we post our land. I personally do it myself. It's a 160 acre property. It's roughly about a 10,000 foot border around the perimeter. About 2/3 of that border is not easily markable, right? Between, kind of my back lot, wood lot, going up to my neighbor's back wood lot. And so, finding that line is always a little bit tricky. When I post my land, which I, do the updates to the signs every year, it's roughly 45 signs that are required for me to be in compliance with the statute based on the perimeter and shape of my land. When I go up and update those signs every year, which I typically do in August, I will find that somewhere between 4 and 9 signs each year go missing in that time period. Whether that is a squirrel, weather, vandal, it's always hard to say, but it does consistently occur that I'll have to replace signs, not just update them. The other issue that happens is I have had conflicts with hunters on my land before who've come on when my signs have been slightly out of compliance in that form, where yes, I might have registered with the town clerk. Yes, I might have updated my signs in August, but say come May, maybe there's a sign or two missing that I haven't checked for. That process of updating my signs too, it takes me about a half a day's worth of work that I'm not actually working on my farm, not trying to grow my business. I'm just out wandering the woods with a stapler and some signs and nails and Sharpie. And so it always strikes me as very odd that, I actually believe in the open land laws and the way it's written in the Constitution. I actually think that's an important and unique and very positive part of what Vermont is. But the idea that the state makes it so onerous and so complex for the landowner to maintain compliance with that dual system, both with the town clerk and the sign postage, as well as those sign updates, as well as the number of signs required within that space, it strikes me as it seems like you're setting, the way the rules are written, you're setting up landowner hunter conflicts where nobody necessarily has ill intention, but because it's so hard to be in compliance and for the landowner to exercise their will, it almost seems inevitable that you're going to have issues. And so I would strongly encourage a purple paint law. I think the permanence and kind of deeper marking of it actually makes a significant difference over just what happens when you have, you know, basically Tyvek signs that you're fastening to either wood or to trees. I also think when it comes down to, you know, the gentleman asked a question earlier about contact information. You know, states like North Dakota already have an online registry system. The state of Vermont already has the infrastructure set up with the town clerk reporting that if you just wanted to include an email address or a phone number, you could have that readily easy contact information. And so I often feel like the argument for the sign is just simply the onerous nature of maintaining those signs. Because again, even the information that's currently today contained on those signs isn't actually a phone number. It isn't an email address. It's actually somebody's physical address. So like, I guess I'm confused as to why somebody would say that that's actually a tool to help contact the landowner, because I don't know about you guys, but showing up at somebody's house is not necessarily the way to get the easiest form of permission. And so I would strongly encourage Purple Paint. I think the annual update and reporting with the state clerk or the town clerk is actually a good one. I just think actually aggregating some of that data could be more useful. There are several other hunting statutes that the state has related to the like access on land and tracking animals that actually already require things like a cell phone or GPS or other reporting. And so to say that like, oh, we shouldn't make hunting requirements connect to that either, I don't know, that it seems like it's confusing to me or in conflict. And yeah, so I guess that's my piece. Folks have questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I do go out and post my signs every year. I have had issues. I'm happy to speak to that.
Questions? Representative Chapin.
Thanks for your testimony. It's helpful to hear from a variety of folks. I guess in my mind, I'm trying to debate between, like if we just make it every 2 or every 5 years that signs need to be updated, does that solve any of your problems?
It is better. I think the annual is really bad. I think 2 years is better. 5 years is even better. But again, keep in mind, right? I have like 45 signs that I'm putting up. Some of them are on a back property line that is, you know, not accessible easily by any sort of vehicle, or like you can really only get to it by scurrying by foot. It would actually even be impossible to get to in winter. So like when there's a discussion of like requiring January updates, like there was like going to be no way I could safely update that. So I think multiple years is better, but I think trying to find a way that it can be a more permanent system like Purple Paint, which somebody would either have to actively scrape off or remove, and which then actually leaves evidence of damage, versus a sign, like again, a stapled sign, to remove that and take it away. There's no measure of evidence that remains to say, oh, was there even a sign there truly? And so it's better, but I don't think it actually solves the problem. And if one of the objectives of this committee is to reduce landowner hunter conflicts, it seems like a no-brainer to me to pursue something like Purple Paint.
Yeah, it occurs to me that if you are finding by May, 4 to 9 of your 45 signs are gone every year, in fact, and if anything, you need to be posting your land twice a year, not checking your signs every 2 to 5 years. I guess I'm having a hard time seeing in your case how the 2 to 5 year extension would actually make your situation.
Like I said, it doesn't. Here's actually the one thing it saves for me. I have to go through and with a Sharpie write that year's date on the sign that is already there. And so it would save me that much work. And so probably a job that currently takes me about 5 hours to do, to kind of do the full posting of the property, I could probably get away with it in about 3 hours. I mean, so it's not really a benefit, would be how I see it.
Yeah, thanks.
Representative Sakowicz.
You spoke of having some conflict with hunters, and I'm wondering if you have any sense of whether the hunters that have come onto your property, even though you thought it was posted, whether there was sort of just like an honest mistake, like one of your signs fell down during the course of the year, as they can just do all by themselves, and the property really did seem like it was not posted. Or do you think it was more about people taking advantage of the fact, or Like, do you have a sense of what the nature of the conflict was?
So just to make sure I want to catch the spirit of your question, it's the idea of like, is this people willfully going through, or is this just, hey, honest mistakes because of, unclear posting? It's hard for me to say. So I've been here 10 years. I can say that specifically, I can point to 8 incidents on the farm of conflicts with hunters coming onto the farm over that span of time. Some I would say are 100% honest mistake and just somebody missed a sign or something happened, which happens. I get it. I think there are a few incidents that are actually more directly connected to hounds in pursuit of game like bear going onto my land. And again, I don't know dogs that can read posted signs. And so that's a whole sticky wicket unto itself, which we might want to hold into abeyance for today. And then there's actually a couple of incidents where I could point to that are, I would, in my opinion, these are folks who knew darn well my land was posted, but were coming on anyway, just because. And so I can't say that every single one has the same motive.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question, sir?
Yeah, just trying to get a sense of what the nature of the conflicts are out there.
Yeah.
Any other questions for our presenter? Seeing none, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you, everybody.
Last but not least, we have Jeff Mack, landowner.
Hello, my name is Jeffrey Mack. I live in Shoreham.
Come sit.
Take this home.
Yes.
That's the hot seat, Jeff. Now you're on candid camera.
Okay. I've lived in Vermont all my life. I now live in Shoreham. I have 10 acres of land surrounded by a lot of farmland, and I happen to be in an area that has heavy traffic of coyote hounders. I've had many experience with the hounders, and my view of hunting is just fine. The hounding is something that I don't approve of, so I post my land every year. No, I have 10 acres, so it's not a hardship, but when it comes to yellow tieback signs, when you guys talk about extending the period at all, like Mr. Gold just said, every 6 months you should go around and check your signs. They just don't last. March of 2022, I had a hounder directly across from my property, staring at a tree with a sign on it. He yelled out the window, "I bet you his land isn't legally posted. I'm going to release my dogs on his property." I called up my game warden and he said, "Please, don't shoot his dogs." I said, "I don't have a firearm. I'm not going to shoot his dogs. It's not the dog's fault." But he knew, they know that there's probably one sign that you're not going to be in compliance. Something's going to be wrong. Let's fast forward to Christmas Eve of 2025. As I'm out my window, looking out my window, I see a coyote running for his life across my property. I look and see a truck pull up on the road, stop the hounds right there. And with intent, he let the hounds go directly across my property. Everybody in the town of Shoreham knows me, and they know my land is posted. I called the game warden. They eventually came out. The first thing he did was take his phone out and said, "Let's go around your property and make sure every single sign is what it should be. You register with the town?" "Yes, I registered with the town." We measured exact distance between each sign until he came to a sign that was not dated 2026. He said, "You are not legally posted. There's nothing we can do." Everybody knows what my intent was. Down to the line, I did everything right except one sign didn't have the proper date on it. Purple paint would have made the conviction 100%. These guys know they're not welcome on my land. It's been made very clear for 10 years. And for Commissioner Batchelder to say and admit he wants to make it more difficult for landowners to post their land and have no chance of conviction, I'm a Vermonter, I'm a taxpayer. I should be able to walk my 10-year-old lab with dementia and my 12-year-old lab with bad hips and not have to worry of being approached upon with coyotes and hounds. But like I said, he stopped his dogs. He could have loaded them in the truck right there. With intent, he just let them go, knowing that there was probably going to be one sign that wasn't right. This guy already had 5 points on his license, would have been 5 more, but instead there was nothing. Nothing, just like the game warden said, there's nothing we can do. It should be up to the hounders to know exactly where private property is and posted land is. I was just talking to a gentleman today. He said there's an app called Onyx. Onyx, they just have to look at their phone. You don't want purple paint on trees. You don't want yellow signs on trees. Yellow signs don't work anyways to make it. You can't legally post your land like Mr. Gold said. Their signs are going to be down. He could try to press charges and have, say, you know, put points on their license, but you can't do it because there's going to be one sign that's not going to be right. Onyx would say exactly, it should be the hunter's responsibility to know exactly where he is and exactly if he's on private property and if it's posted or not. That would take care of purple paint and a yellow sign. But if we're not going to do Onyx, then I'm highly in favor of purple paint. It would be clear, it would be legal. They couldn't say it wasn't dated. It would last for at least 5 years. It would take the burden away from the land owner and the property owner, and everybody should be able to, the conflicts should calm down because I've been in many conflicts with the coyote hounders, and it shouldn't be my problem to keep these people off my land. And then when you try, I'm not compliant, so nothing happens anyways. Any questions?
Give me the brand name of the paint that lasts 5 years.
I would do a research on that and I would definitely come up with a brand name that would last 5 years.
Thank you.
Like I said, I want the conflicts to stop because there's been many. And when they intentionally release their dogs on my property, knowing that my land is posted, that's pure malice that they're just asking for trouble. And there shouldn't be conflict between hunters and landowners. Not the amount of money that we pay for taxes to live here in Vermont.
Representative Chapin and then Representative Osmond.
Thank you. Well, I just want to say thank you for sharing with us your experience. And it's also sort of today I'm really hearing this story that we took some testimony last week. And I guess today I'm really hearing this piece of like, our laws are setting up Vermonters for conflict on both sides. And I don't think that should be the way it is. And I really just appreciate you helping us understand that point, and that is very much sort of our role to make sure that
Thank you.
laws of our state don't set
That work.
others up for conflict.
Thank you.
Rather make them clear for both sides all
Yes.
around. And just want to say I'm sorry that you've had those experiences.
Thank you very much for coming in. Whoops.
Yeah. Do you think that like 90% of hunters are responsible, good hunters, and it's this like bad 10% or small portion that are, like almost with gun owners, I feel like there's a small percentage that really makes it very difficult for people, law abiding gun owners. I mean, and I'm just trying to figure that out, because I feel like if you have private property and you don't want anybody on it, no one should be on it, and I just feel very strongly that way. And so I know there's a solution out there. I mean, I think we have to like think about it, or, in terms of not the signs, maybe not making it, extending the time period. I don't necessarily like the purple paint. I mean, I just worry that someone's going to get a bucket of purple paint or, and just go around and spray paint trees that aren't theirs, some evening. And that concerns me. And also what happens when the property is sold. I mean, you paint over it, you cut down the tree, I worry about that as well. And I also just personally, would rather something else, maybe not purple paint, but something else that would, you know, put a mark on a tree maybe, or something else that was not purple, so.
Well, to your first question, I have no conflicts with deer hunters. Until the coyote hounders came around, the deer hunters, they used to pass through my property to get to the property in the back. And I had no problem. My conflicts every single time is hounders. It's been going on for 10 years, and if I could someday talk to you about some of the stories, you'd be absolutely horrified. But I post my land strictly now to keep everybody off because of the hounders. I won't let anybody come through my land for deer hunting. I just want nothing to do with any of it. And your other question is, there is onyx, like I just talked to, and I think that's a great plan. Again, why is it the landowner responsibility? And the law has to be 100% conviction rate where, oh, that sign's not dated. It says 2025. It doesn't say 2026. It's the second time it's happened to me with 2 people on my land with dogs. So I'm batting 0 and my land is posted.
Yep.
So like I said, onyx, it would take the burden off the landowner. The hunter could look. It's really simple and they would know exactly who was posted and they would know exactly where they're not supposed to be. Like I said, deer hunters, I've never had a problem with. Any other hunter, the hounders. So if you stopped hounding in this state,
I was just thinking about that.
I've been going at that for the last 10 years also. So, but that's my opinion.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Bob, Steven.
Thank you. Bradley Showman is on Zoom.
He's on Zoom.
Yep, if you wanted to scroll it, it's testimony, but it's actually.
Let's roll right into it.
Sorry, folks,
Bradley,
let me just,
Yeah, your camera.
yeah, let me just fix my camera. Just one moment, please. Sorry about that. Good afternoon. Bradley Showman, Office of Legislative Counsel, was asked to meet with the committee today to discuss posting of land. And it seems that the committee might have questions, specific questions for me in mind, and I'm happy to hear those.
Representative Tiger.
We heard a lot of testimony today and the word permanence seemed to come up a lot. Concern I have with permanence in posting is the land doesn't stay in same ownership. Sometimes it does for generations. Sometimes a particular property doesn't stay in ownership for very long. How, if we were to adopt the purple paint, how do we deal with that issue? Permanent, the purple paint out is in a lot of cases is going to outlast land ownership. Trying to figure out how there could be, if at all, a hybrid where the landowner would still on a regular basis need to register their land and be required to maintain in a certain state the quality of the paint stripe or whatever square or whatever is decided. The permanence issue to me is there's not a lot in life that's permanent, and I could see in 5 years the purple stripes down all of these roads that, you know, this all the greenery, and then all of a sudden you've got this purple stripe everywhere. So I'm trying to make it make sense, so.
And is the question uh, for me, I mean, would you like me to propose possible solutions, or is that the question that you're asking in this situation?
Right, with the actual need to put a poster up and date it, there's maintenance obviously that needs to happen. If that's the way we go. With the purple paint, it implies, I think there's the implication that, you know, I can go 5 or 6 years and not have to worry about it, not even do any inspection at all. And I'm trying to figure out if that's really a way we want to go.
And this might be just stepping out of my role as an attorney, but perhaps to help problem solve for the committee. You know, if there are purple paint markings and a landowner changes their mind, or a new owner comes in and wants something different, you know, it could be possible that they paint over the purple markings with a black paint or some other color paint to make it not purple. You know, just shooting from a problem solving point of view, that might be what a property owner might be able to do. I did listen to some of the testimony earlier via YouTube, and there was some discussion about how long the paint lasts. And I can't tell you, based on my experience, how long a purple paint stripe would last outside, given weather conditions, especially in a state like Vermont. And so those are definitely valid questions to be asking. But I do know, through some of my research anyway, that OSHA actually has a specific color of purple that is for visibility markings. And it is, I just had it up. I mean, it's like a OSHA, it's called like OSHA purple, and it's for visibility purposes. And so there are people out there who are designing paint for both visibility and longevity types of purposes. And my kind of problem solving thought in this situation is, if someone changed their mind, paint over it in black or brown or something that would very clearly change that from an OSHA purple or whatever purple that it is to something that's not recognizable as purple.
Thank you.
Representative Pritchett and Representative Chapin. And then.
Yeah, when we talked yesterday, you know, or the other day, we talked about, you know, here's my concern with 608. It's a short form bill. It's vague. It says absolutely nothing. Get purple paint, paint your tree, you're good to go. We had talked about, you know, I had brought forth some concerns and, you know, because you had identified that other states had, you know, had these laws in effect. I would like to know how they treat some of the issues that I asked about yesterday. You know, I have a real concern with this paint, you know, purple paint thing. As Representative Austin, you know, one of my big things is what stops people from going down to the hardware store and buying a case of paint and painting up the state. And if they do that, what are the repercussions for them? What do they have to do to make that right? And what responsibility do they take on? I mean, these are big issues. This 608 to me is a big can of worms. You know, I just have a lot of concerns about it. And I think before we even just, you know, got into the discussion on this, because it's so vague, is to look at what other, you know, what other states do. And how things are listed and laid out there. I just have so many questions about 608. You know, what I gathered out of this whole discussion is there was a lot of folks, elderly folks, that didn't have the ability to do this. And I can sympathize with that. And so that's what I'm focused on. How do we make that issue that, you know, easier for these folks? And to me, purple paint's not, you know, in the form that we're looking at right now, just not the answer. It's you know, it's just a no starter for me. So,
To,
I
if
just,
I may, to,
you could provide those, we had talked about providing what some states do now and the regulations they have. And I'd really like to see some of those.
to answer that question, state laws, there's actually about 20, maybe up to 23 states that allow some kind of color of paint. Most of it's purple. Sometimes the state chooses a different color. I think Montana is orange.
Virginia,
And
so
yeah, in Virginia silver, yes. And so states tend toward, I shouldn't say all states, because sometimes the law will say use purple paint markings and then leave it up to an administrative agency to make rules regarding the purple paint. And then some of the laws kind of tend toward I won't say uniform, but tend toward a certain set of rules about what that purple paint marking is. And so um, that marking is, let me just pull up my purple paint notes. At least 1 inch in width and 8 inches wide. It's between 3 and 5 feet off of the ground. It's a vertical stripe, and it's every 100 feet. Now, to your question about what happens if someone posts who's not the owner, perhaps someone who just decides to paint purple paint markings and to cause confusion or something of the sort. I'm actually not familiar with any state that would have a specific criminal offense to that specific action. Feasibly, the landowner might have a remedy in that situation if they could identify the person, right, in either a tort or a criminal trespass violation, not necessarily relating to the posting in and of itself, but to the act of entering the property and causing damage to it by painting. Kind of the same way as if someone bought a can of red paint and decided to paint a stripe on everyone's door, just because they're causing trouble, they might get in trouble under criminal law or under tort law, provided that the owner or the police could identify the person who's doing it. That does raise an interesting question, and it might even be one that the agency could ask for rulemaking on, for the agency for the Department of Fish and Wildlife to make rulemaking on if it did change the way it was posting from signs to paint, to ensure that there is some kind of remedy for a landowner who is the victim of unlawful posting.
I will, but go ahead.
Representative Norris. Okay,
I think Ella was in line before
Yeah,
me.
Ella.
I'm sorry.
It's good.
Representative Cahill.
Thanks. Let's see, I have a variety of thoughts, but I guess just in this line of conversation, I'm curious what the penalties are for someone who's caught illegally unposting somebody's land. I guess I'm hoping that there's similar repercussions for people who are unposting somebody's land and are without their permission posting somebody's land, whether it's paint or signs. And I guess I just would also, I am curious, I know this is a relatively new job for you, but I am just, a curiosity comes up, like, are people out there taking signs and Sharpies and walking around illegally posting people's property now? It doesn't seem hugely more difficult than a can of paint, maybe a little bit more to carry. But so I guess I'm curious if this is an issue already, and if there are whole penalties for unposting or posting somebody's land. Again, I think just this conversation today is about sort of like, we should be making sure laws are like reducing conflicts between Vermonters and making things clear and appropriate so that there isn't confusion and thus conflict. And that seems to be a bit of a theme today.
And just one moment. Sorry, my space heater automatically turned on. I did not want that in the background making noise. So that's an interesting question. And I think the Department of Fish and Wildlife would be better suited to, because they would be the ones who have received the complaints, right? And so that is, and I'm not familiar with data reporting or anything of that sort that the Department of Fish and Wildlife might put forth about people who have unlawfully posted. And they would be the ones to have that data. Because there's also in the statute and in the subsequent rule, there isn't a legal requirement from the legislature for the Department of Fish and Wildlife to collect that information and make it public in a report, or something of that sort. So that's not information that we specifically have access to. What I can tell you though is, I know that the committee has, rightfully has questions about the difference between posting against fishing, hunting, and trapping and posting against trespass. And one is posting against fishing, hunting, and trapping is a civil law that is meant to balance the constitutional right to hunt versus the constitutional right to enclose your land to prevent hunting from taking place on your property, right? Those two conflicting constitutional rights are being addressed in 10 VSA 5201, and which is the statute that we're speaking about in Representative Easton's bill. And so the civil bill and the corresponding rule doesn't have a penalty, it doesn't have some kind of mechanism there to punish someone who's unlawfully posting land. There is a penalty in the criminal law if your land is posted against trespass generally. If your land's posting against trespass generally, the fine is, just have it up. I'm just going to pull it up so I get the dollar amount exact, $500, or 3 months in prison, or $500, or both if you violate a trespass posting. And owners, for criminal violation, owners can say that, can give verbal notice to individuals that they're trespassing, and if they refuse to leave, contact the police, and then the police can take action to enforce the criminal law if someone won't leave after telling them to trespass. Now, I've opened a can of worms because I raised the issue that there are different kinds of posting to keep people out of your property. One is to post against fishing, hunting, and trapping, and one is to post against trespass more generally. And the question this committee might have, and other committees have had, is does posting against trespass generally encapsulate posting against fishing, hunting, and trapping? And the answer to that question is we don't have clear instruction from the Vermont Supreme Court. There have been cases where the state has asserted that posting against trespass is a general prohibition for a criminal law, but that does not encapsulate posting against fishing, hunting, and trapping. However, the facts of that case did not require the Supreme Court to issue a ruling on that specific narrow issue. The court disregarded that issue and ruled on something else, right? And so there are reasonable arguments on both sides to say that a no trespass sign should prevent people from entering your land for hunting, fishing, and trapping purposes. But on the flip side, because of the constitutional right to hunt, there's an argument on the other side of that saying that no trespass sign does not meet the requirements to enclose your land as required by the Constitution, as carried out in sections 10 VSA 5201. And that's potentially a live issue, and that's the issue that this committee is dealing with, and how to make it clear for people to comply with the law and to avoid those circumstances. I will point out, you did hear from testimony today explaining how some of that enforcement might work. A game warden might come out and examine the signs and determine whether or not you've met those requirements. On the flip side, if land is posted against criminal trespass, a landowner might contact the police, and the police may come out, or the police may not come out and say it's a civil issue. And those are kind of on the ground questions about how this law works in practice and the daily experience of property owners that the committee has the has a task of kind of grappling and dealing with here. Legally speaking, there isn't a slam dunk on either side.
Representative North.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Chair. Let's see, Bradley, several legal questions here. First of all, is it legal to post more frequently or more often than every 400 feet?
Yes.
Okay, so it would not be violating anything for a landowner to post their property, say, every 100 feet.
That's correct.
All right, good, because I've seen that done very frequently in the area where I live. People post their land very frequently, thus making it much more foolproof if somebody's worried about a sign being torn off or blown down or scratched off by a squirrel. There'd be signs every 100 feet, so you could lose 3 in a row and still be compliant. So I would highly suggest that if anybody's really concerned about their land being posted properly and in compliance, that they post every 100 feet. Thank you for clarifying that is still legal to do. Third, I thought, I think it was Mr. Mack, Jeff Mack, made several really good observations. Some of the key problems, let me just summarize here with some of the problems we're trying to solve, because as an engineer, I always like to make sure we understand the problems before we start proposing solutions. Some of the key problems that are setting us up for failure, I think, was pointed out very clearly earlier, setting ourselves up for failure. First of all, that requirements are for 100% perfect compliance. Otherwise, the game wardens can't do anything. That seems to me like we are absolutely setting ourselves up for failure. If we require the landowners to be 100% perfect compliance, and if there's one little thing wrong, their whole property is now vulnerable to being hounded or whatever else they might be trying to protect against. And there are already 2 layers of protection. You have to be registered at the clerk's office, and you have to be posting every 400 feet. That seems rather steep. And the requirement of perfection, I guess, is what bothers me most there. And then we're considering adding a 3rd layer, which again, I didn't necessarily think it was a bad idea, but this online electronic mapping. So I'm going to get to a question related to that earlier, or related to that after I go through my problem. So that's one problem, the requirement for 100% compliance with multiple layers of compliance. Second key problem is the lack of durability of the current signs. They don't even last 1 year. We're requiring them to be posted every year. Okay, fine. But the signs don't even last 1 year. So to me, can't we find some more durable signs? I mean, for heaven's sakes, that just seems ridiculous if we can't find signs to last a year. Third problem is the requirement to annually get out and update all the signs. Even if you're not changing the physical sign itself, you're updating with a little Sharpie, updating the date. That seems like we're setting ourselves up for failure just by that requirement. And the fourth problem, which I think we've heard in all the testimony we've gotten, is the lack of sufficient information on how to contact the owner for permission. If you just put your address, or many times there's nothing there, how do you know who you're supposed to contact? Those to me seem to be the 4, if everybody else came to the same conclusion I did, but they're kind of the 4 key problems that make it really hard to maintain this. And so I would like to discuss some potential possible solutions from a legal perspective. First one you've already addressed. Is it legal to post more frequently? Yes, it is. Okay, so that is a way to resolve the signs getting lost, scratched off, broken, ripped off, whatever. They're more frequent. Second question for you. How would a 3rd layer, if we're going to add a 3rd layer of this electronic mapping online, how would that be included for foolproofing, and how would it relate to the other 2 layers, the registration at the clerk's office and the posting with the signs? And where do we draw the line to be considered to be in compliance? I mean, if we put this electronic mapping thing online so that clearly defines the boundaries and where you are allowed to be and the contact information and everything else, would you then also have to have it visibly posted with signs and then also have it registered at the clerk's office? Looking for a legal opinion there.
And so the statute as written does not contemplate online posting. It contemplates physical posting. So the statute would need to be amended to incorporate online posting. And in so doing, it would be a policy decision whether to make the online posting in addition to or in lieu of physical posting. And it would also be a policy decision to include the certain elements that you had wanted in there, like in terms of contact information, how to get a hold of the property owner and things of that sort. That could be done by statute, or that could be done by asking the agency to engage in rulemaking to implement the rule. To include reasonable contact information and to make that easily accessible.
Yeah, okay, so I think what you're saying is that we could design the law to accommodate some level of hierarchy and where compliance could be met by some fraction thereof of the different methods. So
It could be an either or, like you meet 1, 2, 3, or 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4, or something of the sort. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thanks. In the current words annually, the annual requirement could, I do kind of like the idea of landowners being required to at least rethink about or re-up their desire to keep their land posted on an annual basis. I think that makes sense. I mean, hunting licenses and whatnot are annual, so kind of everybody has to work on an annual basis. But if the sign itself, if we could avoid having to traipse out through the woods every year, that would be, I think, a big help to most people. So would it be possible to put, say, up to 5 years on the same sign, like, you know, from July 1st, 2026, July 1st, 2027, July 1st, 2028, put 5 years worth of dates through which the sign would be valid, all on the same sign, and then still have to do your online updating and or clerk's office updating every year, pay a new fine every year, not fine, fee, not fine, every year. Is something like that a possibility?
It is certainly possible. And, I think those kind of practical solutions, you'd frame the statutory language saying that, the sign shall be dated from the date it is posted and then through the date it is valid through. Because right now the law says the sign shall be dated annually. And the Department of Fish and Wildlife has determined that to mean just writing the year on the sign. And that has brought us to this conversation. That has brought us to this issue. Because instead of writing September 1st, 2025 through September 1st, 2026, it's just 2025, and that creates ambiguity. And so there could be a legislative solution stating that the sign shall be dated on the date it is recorded with the clerk's office up through the date it is valid through. Perhaps more artful language than that, but that would be the idea.
Yeah. My last question is regarding the contact information on the sign itself. I mean, are there potential legal or privacy issues in putting either your name and or your phone number or some contact information on a sign that's out publicly where everybody can view it? I mean, some people might be reluctant to do that, but yet still we'd like people to contact the landowner to get permission. How do you, what's a good legal way to require people to contact for permission and provide that information, but not violate privacy issues?
And so I have the rule up and I'm taking a look at it right now because in the section where it says by permission only, and this is the rule, so not the statute, but the rule implementing the statute. In the section that it says that if you're posting signs saying by permission only, one of the requirements to be on the sign is that it shall state the landowner's name and a method by which to contact the property owner or person authorized to provide permission to hunt on the property. And and so that makes sense for that piece of that regulation because it's by permission only. So you would want the sign to say, how do you get permission? Let me just take a look to see if there's a corresponding
So that's
requirement
already in rule. There's already kind of a methodology for doing that.
for the permission only piece,
Yeah.
right? You know, so there's two different ways that you can post. You can post this is all prohibited or this is by permission. And so for signs that are posted by permission, you have to put your contact information on there already. That is already the current practice. And it does not appear that they're
I think that answers my question. Yeah. So there is a methodology. Okay. Thank you. That was my, thank you very much for answering the question.
Somebody ahead of you. Representative.
No, I'm
No,
good.
Mike.
I think to just talk a little bit more about what Representative North was saying, the electronic posting thing, I think, is going to become an issue because there's already a lag with posting of town records online anyway. And even these electronic hunting apps, they have a disclaimer that you need to verify who owns, because if any town is doing updating, there's always a lag. And then the electronic app has to go through and update those apps and their information. So on day of, if you get stopped, that doesn't mean the app is accurate. And then who's on the hook? So you need to keep that in mind. And there was one other thing. Oh, with respect to permission, we're talking about Vermont, right? We're talking about either hiking or hunting or fishing. If you can't walk up to someone's door and knock on the door and start a conversation, you shouldn't be on their land, period. So.
Representative.
Thank you. I'm just, again, I'm gonna say, I think the majority of hunters are responsible, law-abiding hunters, and I think it's unfortunate that we're gonna create new regs or whatever because of the group of hunters that aren't following the law, and that, you know, bothers me to do that, you know, but it is a reality. I'm wondering, could we put up signs that just say hunting is permitted?
So that is an interesting question, and my opinion, my legal opinion on that piece is that the constitutional provision says that you have a right to hunt on private property on land that is not enclosed. They spell it with an I, not enclosed to hunting. And so the constitutional question for the legislature is what constitutes enclosing the land. Feasibly, the legislature could draft a statute saying that all land is enclosed unless there is a sign granting permission to enclose the land. So it kind of flips the requirement from the property owner having to say no to the property owner having to say yes. I imagine that would run into a constitutional challenge where both sides might have a reasonable argument to say that that would be an ineffective way to an ineffective balancing of the right to hunt on private property versus the property owner's right to exclude that that activity on their land. And I think both sides have reasonable arguments, and I think the Supreme Court would ultimately decide whether a statute in that way is constitutional. And that is a question I do not have an answer to. Other than to say, I think that would be close.
Also, do you, what's the regulations with hunting with dogs?
Hunting with dogs. There are special permits that you need to get with hunting for dogs. It can only take place at certain times of year and for certain animals. And that is beyond that, specific types of hunting and then how an individual would go about that, are beyond my area of expertise at this point. If there's a bill or a specific legal question about hunting with animals, I'm happy to research that or draft language to address that.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, gotcha. Hey, I think that's it. I didn't know if you know this. Is there, maybe, okay, I can ask the members of the committee this question. So I think I'm all set. Thank you.
Representative.
I was just curious if you were familiar with a bill, and I guess I just sort of want to put it on your radar, if it's not already on your radar. A bill that was introduced in 2023, but on the Senate side for a purple paint law that is not a short form bill, is a full bill. And I guess it sounds like you've looked at this language in other states, but if you have looked at that bill, does that sort of capture what we're talking about in terms of purple paint? It might be a useful reference for our committee.
Allow me to refresh my recollection on that bill because I have looked at a number of different laws, and after a certain point, I do have a hard time keeping them separate unless I have a specific note. And can you give me the
Yeah, it's S22 from last biennium. Guess I'm frankly just curious what happened, like if there were conversations about this a couple of years ago. I can look into that.
So this bill would maintain I'll read it out loud. Maintain paint markings on trees, posts, or other objects, provided that the marking shall consist of one painted line of purple paint that is a minimum of 8 inches high and 2 inches wide. So it is a little bit wider than some other states. It's usually at least 1 inch. Shall be painted 3 to 6 feet above ground and painted on a tree, post, or other object that is visible to a person approaching the land. And then to comply with the other regulations about posting as provided in the statute. And let me see if it amends anything else. Looks like the statute also contemplated written notices, as well as purple paint markings.
And not an or. Yeah, the either one was, sorry, an or, not an and. Either one was appropriate use. And they meant the same thing to anybody who saw them.
And it did create a requirement for a person posting lands with paint markings under the subdivision shall record the posting with the town's clerk office in the town in which it's located when the land is originally marked with paint and shall not be required to update a notice annually. So that's an interesting piece in that law in particular, is that there is no requirement to update the posting annually when you post with paint. That's a policy choice that could easily change, but that was the policy choice of that bill. Let me just take a look to see what happened in the committee activity on that, because it looks like it was taken up on, it looks like it was taken up and then did not go very much farther.
Yeah, thank you.
Bradley, when I look at the volume of emails I've had referencing 608 and the number of conflicts that were not voiced, but written into those emails, it's probably 10 to 15% of those emails were sent to me because of historically, there was a conflict between the landowner and the hunter with hounds. I guess my concern is lack of civility on the hounders and respect for the landowners. Right now, we're putting all the onus on the landowner. I think the onus has got to be the hunter who is disrespectful of the land. But we're not showing that in any change in the rule or law. Somewhere along the way, they got to be held accountable if everything else is done right. But it doesn't seem that that's happening. I think the fines should be adjusted in the course of that person's history. 1, you give them a warning. 2, you give them a fine. 3 times, you snap their license. Period. Graduate the fine based upon the prevalence of disrespectfulness. I don't know how you got to word that. That's just my thoughts. A lot of this would go away.
And if the hunting with dogs is not necessarily germane, well, I guess germane in the sense that it kind of piques the question. This bill in particular, both Representative Eastis' bill and then Representative Wood's bill, don't necessarily talk about what types of hunting. And so if the committee determines that maybe this is less of an issue about posting and more of an issue about certain activities, I do think that that's at least a new language for the bill, if not a different bill entirely.
Representative Jacob.
Yeah, I think it's a really great point that our chair is making, and but I would add that I think we're really hearing 2 problems. We're hearing about these conflicts that are set up because the laws are not clear enough or are so extreme in terms of 100% perfection on the landowner's part that there's just these ongoing conflicts, and maybe there's not enough enforcement ability or not strong enough not strong enough enforcement penalties. Sorry, that's what I meant. But there is this other issue that we have heard the most from, and that is around the ability of landowners to actually simply post their land. And those folks, that is much broader range. And those folks are saying, we literally physically can't get out there to do this regularly. And they've been asking for this purple paint because it's got this sort of longevity and more permanence of the paint. So I guess I just want to make sure I feel like we are being asked to solve 2 issues, and I just want to make sure we're articulate. You said 4, but I think those 2 sort of boil down to 2 primary issues. Did I miss something?
All 4 of my issues fall under the first one.
Okay. Yeah. So as to formulate this into a question instead of just a statement, I am curious about, what was I curious about? I'm curious about the 100% perfection. And is there room for us in this constitutional language around enclosure to say that when a warden goes out and says, oh, somebody's been on your land, it's like the 2nd or 3rd time they've crossed your property intentionally, even though they know because they're clearly, I just wonder, does every sign have to be perfect? Every sign have to be perfectly dated? Could we do something there that would be clearly legal, that would lower the bar and frankly, give room for enforcement to do their job, because they have discretion. And law enforcement always has discretion, and they can say, this is a first time, they missed the sign, versus, I know that person. I know they've been on multiple people's property intentionally without permission. So I guess I'm looking for more tools in the toolbox for law enforcement.
Yeah, and so it's curious whenever law enforcement would exercise its discretion to require 100% accuracy, and to such a level that you could have 10 posted signs and 1 is misdated and then the whole property is not posted. That is curious. And so a potential legislative solution might include amending 5201 in the notices section. So it says, notices shall be at each corner of the property and not more than 400 feet apart at the boundaries thereof. You could design language stating that, these signs shall be of standard sign and design as the commissioner shall specify, and de minimis deviations from the the rules set forth therein shall not mean that the property is not enclosed. Yeah, we'll have to get better language than that, but that's just pulling from my brain right now, is providing a de minimis exception to having an error on the sign. A date could be wrong, a sign could be half torn down. And would that mean the whole property is not enclosed if one of the signs is half torn down? I could see a game warden making that determination, and by the plain language of the statute might have authority to do that. And perhaps stating that a de minimis error in the sign when the rest of the property is so enclosed shall not mean that the property is not enclosed for purposes of the statute might be a good idea. And it's certainly possible.
Great, thank you.
Representative Christie.
Thank you. And that was going to be my question. Was the lack of 100% compliance on the landowner part on signs. And I wanted to point out, that may be not a law enforcement, that may be a judicial interpretation, keeping track of the letter of the law. That would be my thought, is they take it to court and they're gonna do findings, and this hunter that's in violation hires an attorney, and the attorneys read the law and it says, well, they're all supposed to be dated and this one's not, so therefore it's in violation of the statute. I suspect that might be more to the point of why that would be an issue. And the same thing would happen with purple paint. And I'm looking at the bill from last session, 8 inches, 2 inches wide. If it's 1.5 inches, it's not compliant. So I think we have to lean towards, if the intent of the landowner is to have his property enclosed, that, and he's done the effort to put the signs up, that if something less than 100% gets judicial interpretation or the enforcement interpretation tossed out, I think that's where we would have our biggest bang for the buck to understand that the landowner's property is posted. As to the hounds, what we heard from Jeff Mack, you have hunters and you have hounders that are going to do exactly what they want, no matter what the sign. And there is no law, short of setting up electric fence, there's no law that's going to stop those people. And unless it would have to be better enforcement, they'd have to be caught at the time. I don't know how we would do that other than more wardens and more law enforcement perhaps, but yeah, we're looking at a bill that's trying to address a small portion of the hunting population.
Just one more question. Legally, could we, I mean, we're talking about between purple paint and now posting. I mean, is it wide open what we could put up to signal the land was enclosed?
Is that a question for me?
Yes.
Okay, yes, yes, it is. The legislature could design any any kind of signage or some kind of, whatever it is that you wanted on the posting to enclose the land. The legislature could design that and have that be enforceable.
Thank you.
Representative Sacklitz.
Yeah, I was really been intrigued by the conversation around some ways to make it so that you don't have to have, strict compliance with the law in order to perceive the intent. And you suggested a de minimis sort of exception, which sounds good. But I was also wondering if it might make sense to include some sort of reasonableness standard where, you know, a reasonable person upon, you know, coming to the property line would assume that the property is posted, you know, include language like that so that, you know, if you're posted properly along one side of your property, but you have an outdated sign, you know, a half a mile away, that would obviously, you know, you get the point.
Yeah, yes, and either way would be a good solution. I think we would definitely be workshopping language. So language I used is just pulled from my brain in that moment. But we would workshop the language a little bit more to make sure that I think a reasonable person would see 10 signs and one sign being damaged doesn't necessarily open up the whole property. We would have to kind of take a look into that, but that it is certainly possible.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions of our presenter? Seeing none, thank you very much. Appreciate your attendance and wisdom. Thank you.
And patience.
Thank you. Thank you. Y'all have a good day.
Bio break?
Bye, break.
Chair,
Yes.
would you be willing to pull item H 805 off the wall and allow me to present that, introduce that to the committee?
It's 8:05.
Water resources of the state. I would very much like a bio break.
Might have time for that.
How long has John he's on recovery and resilience? Did you ask him for a half hour, 15 minutes, or did he want a whole hour?
He's in for half an hour. You have the floor at 3:30.
Do we know how? The only person that knows the floor is Jill. She sent you
I added on.
an agenda for the floor. How long it is?
I think it's estimated at 45 minutes.
I'll do it after the floor.
Sure.
Do you think we should take a vote on that? Or can you just make that decision?
We're not.
I've never had this happen.
It's up to the chair.
You know, but
With the discretion of the chancellor.
Somebody's willing to come in that late. It's fine. I'll say. We can get a quorum, we can do it.
Can we do it now? Got 10 minutes.
Can we take a break and you guys can discuss this during the break?
Sure. Yeah.
I'd just like to go then.
Right. Take a break.
After I till 3.
After adjourn.
Just say adjourned.